Hello and welcome back to my LEGO Castle Kingdom, where I'll be showing you my latest work in progress, which includes this awesome working water wheel, complete with moving water, the surrounding area and landscape, which I've also built up near the mountain, the start of the Blacksmiths building, which is what this working water wheel is powering, and the Royal Inn, which is now fully complete. And before I begin, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who's posted ideas and suggestions for what I should include in my LEGO Castle Kingdom. I really appreciate all your ideas and please keep them coming. So as for today's episode, let's start by taking a look at this area in front of my working LEGO waterfall, because all of this acts as a really stunning backdrop for the working water wheel. This is a really impressive design that combines two different mechanisms, one for the actual spinning part of the water wheel, and the other for the moving water that flows on the side. These two different elements combine together to form a really lifelike and realistic scene, and the combination of these two things really help to sell this effect and make it look like the water wheel is creating this gush of water on the side of the stream. This looks especially cool from a lower angle from the side, and if I remove the side panel, we can actually see how I've achieved this. There's 8 individual bits of water, they all fit neatly into a 4x8 space, and to create their movement, I'm using a crankshaft design with these small Technic beams which rotate around, and that in turn lifts each bit of water up individually to create this really awesome flowing water effect. And all of this mechanism is neatly concealed by simply adding back the rocks on the side, which also form part of the landscape. And what I love about this is it's super reliable, because none of the water is actually connected, it just slides really smoothly up and down, and that in turn means that this mechanism is really reliable and doesn't jam up or anything. So all in all, it's just a really fantastic design that I'm super happy with how it's turned out. And as for the actual water wheel itself, I'd like to talk a little bit about the design. So obviously this is the final design that I've gone for, because it's as circular as it can be while still being made out of LEGO. But that wasn't actually my first iteration of this design. Originally I wanted to use the water wheel pieces that LEGO use in their castle sets, which are these pieces. And I was thinking I could build something like this out of those pieces. Although, as you can see, this is nothing compared to the final design, which is much more wheel shape. But I just thought it was interesting because even though LEGO always uses these pieces for water wheels in their sets, they're really complicated to actually put together unless you use some of these curved pieces like this. So that just didn't work out that well. I couldn't think of any way to make this any more rounded, so instead I scrapped this design and went for this design, which you see here. And the way I achieved this effect is by using these fence pieces. So you can see 4 of those make a nice round circle, and they each include these bars along the fences. And then basically I've attached a whole lot of these little assemblies, which are just made out of some clip pieces, tiles, plates, and some headlight bricks. And you can see how with each of those attached around, they will gradually form a really nice round wheel effect, with the added bonus that these bits on the top stick out and make it look like they're studs or nails driven into the wood. So I'm really happy that I did end up going with this much more advanced but also much nicer looking design, because it just stands out so much better. It's actually wheel shaped for a start, and then the middle also includes this really nice quarter wheel pieces with this centre bit in the middle. And what I like about this is there's still plenty of space in between each of the paddles of the water wheel, so there's actually a lot of space for them to pick up the water from the other side, and that's just such a cool and very impressive design, because there's not really too many parts that you can actually use to achieve that rounded circular effect. Now let's take a look at the actual landscaping around this area, because as you can see I've done quite a large job with this area in particular. This was all empty last time, and this is a really cool part because I've integrated it so it looks like it's seamless with my waterfall, and that was a real challenge to really make sure that everything flows together and make sure that it's all part of the same structure. So my thinking for this area, like I mentioned before, I'm planning on having a massive mountain over at the back with the castle on top. So instead of the land in front just being flat, I wanted to start increasing the elevation to really make it feel like it's in a rocky mountain territory. And that also gives me a good opportunity to hide all of the mechanics and mechanisms of all these water wheels and the blacksmith equipment underneath several bricks worth of height. So if we start over at the entrance, over on this side, this is a river which includes a little beaver dam with a couple of beavers with their gigantic teeth which stick out of the front, as well as a tiny pair of arms and the tails, which are made out of a Lego diver flipper piece. So there's just two of them, and then there's also their actual dam, which is also a very crowded but very interesting design, with these different twigs and sticks, all attached with various hinges, and you can see that's actually damming off the water quite a lot. This is where the water level would normally be if there wasn't a beaver dam there, but it's actually been decreased to just a small puddle in the middle with sand and mud on either side. So that's a really cool touch, and I thought that was a good way of just making it a bit more interesting and adding some further elevation to this part. With the actual landscaping, I've used some hinged grass techniques. They're actually using the large 4x4 hinge panel pieces, so there's one of them there. And that also includes some berry bushes. These berry bushes are a neat little build, so they're slightly different, but basically they use these leaf pieces along with some cherries on the sides and on top, and that creates a pair of really colourful and very tasty looking wild berry bushes which really complete this little corner of the build. One other detail I'd like to point out is actually a bit of a secret. So over here there's another hinge panel, and this can actually be opened up to reveal some treasure. So you can see someone's buried a treasure chest here full of golden coins, and I thought that was a good little place to include that. Nice little smuggler's cache right next to the lake near the waterfall. I just thought might as well use some of that elevated space to hide something underneath it. So moving along from the beavers, we continue along the river, and you can see it's gradually lowering in elevation, only slightly here, just by a few plates, and all this is of course tiled over with this really vibrant transparent blue effect with the white wherever the water would be crashing or coming into contact with other things inside the river. That's what all of this white water is in front of the waterfall. That's obviously causing a lot of interference to the natural flow of the water. And I've tried to use a variety of different green pieces to really help sell this nice varied rocky landscape effect. Past the water wheel, this river actually drops in elevation very dramatically, and then the river ends over here because all of this is a cutaway view, so you can imagine the river would continue on past where my layout is, but I just thought that was a good place to end that because I didn't want this river to go on too long. But I think this way it's a good balance between having a really large river that's big enough to get the idea across while not being too big and taking up too much space that I want to fill up with some other stuff. So what does this water wheel actually power? And the answer to that is a blacksmith's building with all of the tools and machinery that any good medieval blacksmith needs. This includes the gigantic trip hammer, which is directly connected to the water wheel, and that repeatedly hammers down on the anvil in front of it with a gigantic force that really assists the blacksmith and helps them to create all sorts of tools, weapons and armour. And believe it or not, this trip hammer is actually a realistic scale to the minifigure. I highly recommend checking out some videos of real life trip hammers on YouTube because they are massive and they all make this really distinctive sound as they hit the metal anvil down below. So that's a really cool effect with the Lego version, and the way this works is it's actually not too complicated. All of this is driven by the same motor that drives the water wheel, and after gearing that down through a gearbox, the output comes out of this bevel gear, and that in turn powers this brick-built gear, which includes these 4 blades, and you can see when this turns around, this lifts up the hammer and drops it back down again onto the anvil. That is also based on the realistic mechanism that real-life water wheel-powered trip hammers actually use to operate, and I'm really happy with how that's turned out as well. I think that will look really cool once I've built up the rest of the blacksmith building. And one other thing which I'd like to point out is this little device here, which is the bellows that blows air onto the blacksmith's forge. So this will keep the fire nice and well stoked, which is very important if the blacksmith is going to be working there all day, don't want the fire to go out. And that's again a really realistic movement, with the 2 sides of the bellows opening and closing, and blowing the air out of the front. And this is also a really simple but effective solution. So you can see how I've made that out of 2 cape pieces, and you'll see that when the capes go up, they naturally spring back down again because of the tension in the fabric. The way these actually work is they have this little round 1x2 plate inside, and then as the plate turns around, both of the capes naturally fold back inwards. And I'd also like to mention that for the actual forge, that will be probably raised up higher, so it's more in line with the actual bellows. So that's a super cool and very effective design. And that's another thing I wanted to point out, is the actual construction of this forge that is achieved by using a whole lot of these 1x1 clips attached to a Lego wagon wheel. So obviously I'm going to fill this up with fire and flames and all kinds of magma and lava to really make that blacksmith's forge stand out. Finally, let's finish up with a quick look at the new additions to my Lego Inn. And I won't go over the whole thing because I covered that last episode, but I just want to show you some of the latest things which I've added, which make it complete. I've extended this fireplace out by a few bricks, which I think looks a bit better for a fireplace. Also added the top part, which pokes through the roof. And that's the only thing which I still need to get, is just some more of these fences. I have ordered them, I'm just waiting for them to arrive. Then I've also finished off this little roof section here, with this balcony area that actually extends out towards this way. That's using these flag pieces, both the angled and the regular flags, to create this really nice variation in the height of the roof. And I've also finished up all the exterior walls and swapped in the final colours. I've also completed the interior, and I've actually used a few suggestions that you guys had. So some of the new additions to here, I've tiled the entire top part with this really nice stone effect, and it's also full of customers. Then over in this corner, I've added some barrels there, very important to store all the drinks and wines, as well as this little utility cupboard. There's nothing in there at the moment, but that's just a good little use of space in the corner. And then if we move past all of the customers enjoying their meals and their food, there's the owner of the inn, who's currently preparing a fish with this little kitchen area over here. And you can see that includes a little cupboard with frying pan and some spices, as well as a small oven with this wooden door. And then around the other side, I've also included this very fancy gold and dark red rug in front of the fireplace. And then this is actually something that someone suggested in the comments, which is to keep this as a bathhouse, but to add some curtains in the front for some privacy, which I think is a super cool effect. And that's actually something which I hadn't thought of, so a big thank you to whoever suggested that. That's a really cool idea. And these are simply a pair of Lego cape pieces which hang on a rail at the back, and this allows them to be opened up and closed for minifigures to enter and exit the bath. There's a minifigure having a bath there, as well as a small ladder to get in and out. So that just completes the first floor, and now that is fully furnished. I've also topped up the second floor with some more decorations and furniture. So here you can see how the fireplace extends upwards. That looks very cool. Then there's also some more cupboards and stands over here with some tea and flowers. And I decided not to go for any tiling for this floor. But then there's some rugs in front of the guest rooms to let people know which room to go to. And I've also expanded on the furnishings inside, just with a little table and chair, as well as a cupboard. They're a little bit dark, but that just makes them look a little bit more complete and welcoming. And with that, the inn is now fully complete, so I'm really excited about that. Now I can get started on some of the other buildings, which will probably be the Blacksmiths building. I'm thinking for this building, I'm going to go for a medium blue and brown colour scheme. That'll be a good bit of contrast between the yellow and black inn. That's going to be a really nice bright colour, which doesn't interfere too much with the more natural tones near the river and the landscape. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of my LEGO Castle Kingdom, and as always, if you have any ideas or suggestions for any part of this LEGO creation, then please let me know in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel for even more LEGO creations. A massive thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon for helping to make my videos possible, and if you'd like to see your name here in the credits, as well as access exclusive bonus videos and more, then the link to join me on Patreon will be in the description below, and I'd really appreciate your support. I'll see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.